Welcome to the Dealing with Goliath podcast. The mission of Dealing with Goliath is to sharpen the psychological edge in business leaders with skin in the game who want to be more effective under pressure, uncover hidden value, and increase profitability. With expert guests across the business spectrum, we deliver gems of wisdom, delving into their methods, their thinking, and approach to business, life, and problem solving. This is the Grande Cup of Insight, long form podcast interview format where we take the time to really delve in that little bit deeper into our guests' experience, their stories, and to get those priceless nuggets for you. So I'm your host, Al McBride. My guest today is Brian Traichel. Brian is with more than 20 years of experience in professional sales. He's a master connector, sales strategist, sales trainer, coach, and presenter. And he's worked with many well-known authors and speakers, more than 3,000 real estate professionals. Brian's focus is on helping sales professionals, business owners, and senior leadership teams grow their businesses, increase brand visibility, and create a top-of-mind awareness using LinkedIn. Brian's personal motto is moving your ideas into action. Now, I have to say, I've been working with Brian recently in a group which was organized by a mutual friend of ours, and Brian's just sheer depth and breadth of knowledge around LinkedIn and sales principles in general, the level of strategies and tactics was just incredibly impressive. And even just applying a few of them, I've already started seeing complete changes and yield results. So I can personally vouch for his methods and approach, really delivering fruit very, very quickly. So it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Al. It's definitely a pleasure to be here with you and your community and help spread the good word of LinkedIn and, pros why we should all be on it and spending more time. So I'm really excited to share it's been a journey for me over 16 years when LinkedIn first came out, and it started very small, and it's been around for a while.
That's an interesting one, because a lot of people, the stats are that, people spend a lot less time on LinkedIn than Facebook, but yet the actual yield for business is 10, 20, 30 times compared to Facebook. So it is where business gets done, isn't it? It's a remarkable platform.
It really is. And the thing about, there's such an aversion to LinkedIn. People are like, well, my client base is on Facebook. Yes, but they're also on LinkedIn. So if you're going to spend the time to post or do anything on there, just carry it over. It's really the same mindset. You don't have to separate the two. And I've always said, it's not two personalities. You're the same person. So it's not, This is who I am on LinkedIn. This is who I am on Facebook. Integrate, right? Integrate your message, because there's unlimited opportunities for everybody. And I don't believe in I have to be professional here and then not so professional on Facebook. So with the pandemic, that's really kind of shattered that line where people can kind of just show up now. And be yourself.
That's a really interesting thing. I mean, I think I'm nearly the opposite. I've largely abandoned Facebook because I was just kind of all the people I hang out with now in a business context, virtually speaking, hardly any of us use Facebook, but loads of us go back onto LinkedIn, to check messages, check updates, what are people that you want to do business with sharing, all that kind of stuff. But you are touching on something really, really interesting there. So what would you say are some of those common myths about LinkedIn and about sales on LinkedIn, doing business on LinkedIn in general? Because you touched on one of them, was that you have to be super formal and a very different person. So that's definitely one of them. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I think, the myth, the number one myth, of course, that probably everybody, I'll use the generic everyone, right, which is probably not true. But in speaking to that, is the first thing was, several years ago, is, LinkedIn, one is I don't have the time for it. It's just another thing I have to manage. Okay. Second isn't it just to get a job? Right. That's what people would say.
Okay, right. So one is then that it's just like this virtual CV, which it can be. Also.
Well, it was intended, for to have a network, right? So the whole concept of LinkedIn was, yes, you can get a job, but it kind of morphed because recruiters were using it to find and place people, and they started going that. And there's definitely a functionality there. But originally, it was meant to create a network of professionals in your sphere of influence for each area, almost like a mini BNI. You had your own
Okay.
concierge. Who do I know that's an attorney in my network? Who do I know that's a real estate agent in my network? So the goal was to build a solid, trusted network of professionals that you could go in, search your connections, and find that service or product that you were looking for.
Right. Makes
Right.
sense.
And then what happened was it turned into expanding outside of your network and then getting more connections and more opportunities. So it keeps changing, but the original concept was to make solid connections. And if you really break it down, it's a connection request, right? You're sending a connection request. And then if we go further into the word connection, we are trying to build a connection with the person and a relationship. So the idea is to really have a great referral, where you can trade leads, share information, and help each other. But people have gone with the more, I need to start sending more messages, connecting with more people. But what they're not realizing is that if you're on LinkedIn and you have 500 plus connections, you have to ask yourself, do I know all the 500 people already existing within my network, right?
Very
And
few
those
people do, right?
Right. And those 500 people know 500 people. So when you look at your second degree network, you could have upwards of 100,000 people that are within reach of speaking to. But what happens is people go, I need more and more and more. So I need more connections. It's like, well, let's just stop the more connections and figure out who do I know right now? And could that turn into a referral or a sale?
Okay, very good. So what are some of those other mistakes that people make when they use LinkedIn?
Well, there's a lot of that.
There's a ton of them, but
That's a
what are
ton
some
of
of the
mistakes.
big
You're right.
areas? Yeah,
I think the big areas is not truly engaging with people and sending connection requests with no meat, right, or no message. So
right,
if you're going to connect with someone, there has to be a reason or something prompted you to say. I wouldn't just arbitrarily say, "Oh, I like that person's profile photo. I think I'm going to connect with them." Right. So we have to say, "Hi, Al. This is Brian. I'm looking to expand my reach in the UK with podcasts. It'd be great to connect."
right. So it has to be something somewhat relevant.
Yes, you want to anchor the invitation, whether I'm expanding my network with industry professionals or this and this, but and then you want to follow up with that person within 2 to 3 days, because what happens is you'll get their response. Most people are willing to accept your connection request as long as your profile, looks good and is well presented. But what happens is neither party follows up with a phone call or a message
Right.
and really scheduled something, or they just go in your heap of contacts to be forgotten, and then
Yeah.
it's kind of a wasted effort.
Because so many times I've got these sort of blank requests, but their job title or their area seems kind of interesting. So, and as you say, they seem legit enough. So you go, "Oh, okay, yeah,
Right.
we'll run with that." Then you don't hear anything, or even I've sent them something saying, "Hey, thanks for reaching out. What's your differentiation? Or what's your take on such and such?" And then there's no reply, and you think, "Why did you reach out to me in the first place?"
And
You know?
that's what people are asking. They're scratching their head. It's like, wait, let me get this straight. You asked me to connect with you. I responded saying, "Hey, great. How can I help you?" And it goes, radio silent. So
Hmm.
there was nothing in that transaction. So I have a rule, which is engage or don't engage. Right. So you can, as your invitations are coming in, obviously you want to build out your network. It's beneficial to get as many solid connections as possible. But I'm necessarily not going to respond to every single one. So, you could say, thanks for connecting. Great to be connected, and just get a message out there. That's a non-engage. But an engaged invitation would be, I would accept it and say, thanks for reaching out. What's the best number to reach you at? I have some questions about your business. So I keep it very vague, but that little question mark is probably the most powerful tool in LinkedIn.
Okay, that's an interesting tip. Right, right.
Curiosity is a human behavior that is very true to form on LinkedIn. So, and my questions are transparent and they are true, because I literally do have questions about your business. You just don't know which questions I have.
Right, right.
Right. So the curiosity, what kind of questions do you have, Brian? Well, more in the line of the podcasting. What's the best number to reach you at? Question mark. Right.
Right.
So I'll keep that conversation going. Now, again, I am a background in sales, and I'm not here to manipulate the conversation or do anything to that's not with integrity. But there is a sequencing in order to get people's attention, because we are bombarded enough, and the curiosity seems to be that little missing link that gets people to say, "Oh, that's an interesting message. I wonder what that's all about." Otherwise,
Right.
it's, hi Al, thanks for connecting. Here's what I do. Here's a link to my website. Here's my calendar link. And by the way, I'm really not concerned anything about you, but this is all about me. So hey, let's schedule a call.
Right. So it's the classic thing of, get the focus off yourself, get it onto the other. In negotiation, we'd say, the counterpart, but you could say who, or in presentations, it's the audience, but it's the same principle. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's about them and getting
Right.
that principle clear.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
What sort of other principles would you bring in then as general ideas that are good to get straight when you're getting on LinkedIn?
Well, I think the reality is my whole concept is based on Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, right?
Right.
So I've taken that book, which was written in the 40s or 50s, and it stays true to this day, which is about being interested in people, right? There's that,
Hmm.
people imagine everyone with a sign around their neck that says "Make me feel important," right? So we have to we have to look at their profile and really read it and understand the person, and maybe again, gather why they reached out to us, but look for a common connection, whether we do business or not. It's about networking and being visible. So when the topic of real estate comes up, or the topic of a CPA, you could say, oh, I know someone in my network that does it. I'll make an introduction. So the more opportunities we can be seen, the more chances we have. And we're not paying, a large amount of money or $0 to use this LinkedIn account. So it's a great resource, right? But going back to the How to Win Friends and Influence People, I'll literally, I'm a military veteran, U.S. Air Force. I went to Eastern Connecticut State University. I've played these sports. I've been in these clubs. So I look for people's profiles that may have something of common, where we went to the same school or we both served. And then I'll start the relationship building, with something we have in common. Or I see you're both Boston Red Sox fans, or or you like the NFL. So there's so much information on LinkedIn, more than Facebook, which is surprising, because people think
It
that
really
it's not,
is.
yeah, but they don't realize it, because what happens, they sit down, they start putting their profile, and they're not realizing how much data they're putting out there, which creates a psychographic profile. So if you
Right.
were to really study a person's profile, you will learn how they talk, what they like, and you can get a pretty good sense of how to engage with them, right? So if you study any NLP or human behavioral characteristics, it's all there. It's gold. It's just a matter of, how do I interpret this data?
Right.
Yeah, it's
Excellent
pretty
stuff.
fun actually when you break it down, and you're not being manipulative. Again, you're just really trying to understand that person, because most people are waiting for the sale. Okay, when's he going to pitch me? What's coming next? Is he really being authentic? And when you call someone and have a conversation, and there's no talk about, well, this is how much it costs, they're kind of like, wait, what just happened? Someone just called me and they never sold me anything.
Right. So how do you move it on then?
You ask them what they need. What are they looking for, right?
Okay.
Yeah, how can I help your business? What's your target? Are you familiar with how to use the LinkedIn platform? Do you understand the search parameters? Do you know you can do this? No, I wasn't aware of it. And I'll show people, how to do it. And then they'll say, well, how do I learn more? I said, well, if you'd like to, we could work together. We could do a webinar, but I'm not there for really, because the sale happens when you provide the value anyways. So by
Right.
by by adding value, it's a five. Maybe I'll get a call 3 months from now. I just got a call, from a client from 2 years ago, whose son now is graduating college and wants to get their LinkedIn profile. So it's just a matter of the momentum and front loading everything to really get that benefit. So it's, people are like, well, when am I going to get a sale out of this? How long does it take? It's like, can't answer that question.
That brings me to another sort of subsection of the same conversation, which is, what are some of those little red flags you have when someone approaches you? What triggers that? And one maybe is around expectations. Is it?
Oh, well, so the red flag, as far as a perspective of inbound invitations, when someone's going to suddenly put you on a
Ah,
7 to 14 day drip campaign, right, which clogs up your inbox, you're going to be the red flag is going to be probably more than 2 sentences in the connection request, right?
oh, okay. So when people say more than maybe they need to.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
short and sweet on LinkedIn. If it's a legitimate, connection request, it's going to be short and sweet. But if it's very long and drawn out, it's not. A connection request is not meant to send a message. It's meant to connect, right? The message comes after connecting.
Okay.
And
Okay.
another great way to do it is if you're looking to determine if a human did it or an Autobot did it, they'll have your name, right? And then a comma, and then there'll be like two spaces, then a message. If I even see that, I just delete it. I don't even read it because it was done by an automatic, because nobody would normally type like that. So if you're
I
going to,
do, which
right,
makes me nervous now.
right. Okay.
I
Well, I
usually
mean, yeah. Well, that's more takes the form of an automated, type of thing. So try and keep it
okay.
super brief. I tell people, imagine you're texting someone. That's the way I communicate on LinkedIn.
Right. Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a
Right,
lot of
because
sense.
people don't have time when they're managing so many different things, emails, 3 accounts, this platform. In the thing about LinkedIn, it is B2B. It's a B2B platform. So it's short and sweet. No one's offended if you just say, great, what else? Or very to the point. So you can be very matter of fact, and no one's going to slight you for being very, gruff or any of those things. So it's okay to be short and sweet.
Okay, that makes sense. Oh, talk to me about more some of the errors in expectation when you work with clients. What are they coming to you with often? So they're like, "Yeah, I keep hearing about making loads of connections and loads of deals or sales through LinkedIn. Okay, Brian, help me out." So when they come to you, what are some of those faults in thinking?
Well, yeah, well, the first one is always like, well, when can I expect results? Well, okay,
Right,
let's
right.
define results because I say, well, I can tell you what your results are instant. They're like, what do you mean? I said, well, you asked me what kind of results. I said, you'll get instant results. Well, how so? Well, if I send someone a connection request and they accept it, instant result, right? And then
Okay,
you send them a message, they respond back to you, that's a result. That's really on the user. It's not the platform, it's how you engage with that person. So the results really are instant. It's just a matter of how many steps it takes in that conversation to present to them, follow up. So the sales process has to be very well defined when you're using LinkedIn. If you think that someone's going to land on your profile and call you because they have to have your service, that doesn't happen too often, right? They may connect with you and then you'll have a
right.
conversation, but most people say, I'm looking for this, and they just pull out their credit card and buy your product. So by having a great profile does not mean that your door is going to be knocking or your phone is going to be ringing. So that's definitely a misconception.
Okay,
I
so
did all this work on my profile and nobody's called me. They're not going to call you. It's not there for that. The only thing the profile serves is for you to be in a good position for people to accept your connection requests, right?
okay,
Or your keywording and you're showing up. So it does have some merit. Don't get me wrong. But as far as weighting that with actual direct business is very limited, right? The business comes as you being a hunter, right? Going out business development and creating a campaign, and also sticking to that campaign. Because I'll show you. Here's what you do daily, weekly, monthly. You have to do this for at least 90 days before you really get that front loading and that momentum going. And then guess what happens? Well, Brian, it didn't work. Okay. How much time did you spend on it this week? Well, I was only on it for 1 day this week. Okay. Every day. It has to be consistent. So if you're not consistent, it's not going to work. You may get lucky. I mean, there's always that random chance that something will pop through, but it has to be consistent because that visibility builds on that momentum, right? And over time, the amount of people seeing you and responding gets magnified, and that's when your phone starts to ring. Hey, I happened to see your post. I saw your comment. I got your message. Thanks for the birthday wish. Really appreciate that. So that's where you have to manage many different components to get the full result.
okay.
And for me, birthdays is probably the most overlooked area, as small of a thing as it could be, because Facebook has birthdays, so does LinkedIn. But saying just happy birthday wasn't working because that just says happy birthday, Al, and you're like, okay, great, thanks. You write me back, say thanks, and that was our exchange. But I started
Or a
asking.
thumbs up or something. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it kind of falls to the ground. But when you start engaging with people and say, "Hi, Al, happy birthday. Hope you're doing great. Any big plans for your birthday celebration?"
Right.
Question
So
mark.
start, as you said, the question mark starts the conversation in
All of
some
a
way.
sudden, people were like, "Oh yeah, thanks for asking, Brian. What have you been up to?" I've been great. What's the best number to reach you at? Let's catch up on a phone call, and then take it offline as fast as you can.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. So, and
Okay.
again, people think they need to manage it, but you're managing a business. LinkedIn is not, it's just something extra. This can literally propel your business, 10 times what you've been doing, or 3 times depending on what effort you put into it. So you want to look at it a little bit differently and say, this is a tool, and it's the most overlooked, underutilized, but highly SEO'd platform that now people are starting to jump on board. Right, but
Right.
it's not anything new, right? And Microsoft bought it in 2016, I think, for $23 billion or some,
Oh,
some crazy. So obviously they see the value in LinkedIn.
big time.
So
Big
it's not
time.
going away. So if you want to put, stack your deck, definitely make LinkedIn a part of your daily, business, as well as using it for, having a company page and things like that. So to me, LinkedIn serves as my own website. I don't even have a website. There's no need for me to have a website because everything
Right.
is in the LinkedIn profile.
Makes a lot of sense. In that way that, weirdly enough, I am suddenly getting a lot of requests and mail from people who do what you do, who are experts at LinkedIn, which I find strange that I didn't particularly remember seeing them before, but suddenly they're there. And I just wonder because you did mention in our training quite a few points of differentiation in your approach, and I just wonder what you believe those are compared to someone says, okay, I need my profile improved, I need to make LinkedIn work for me. How are you different from some of your competitors? Because I know you distinctly are.
Right. Well, the competitors are looking at LinkedIn as a landing page or some type of marketing funnel, right? A lot of the people are taking
Right.
the internet
Right.
marketing approach, and they're trying to put, my banner has to be a banner of this is what I do, and um, the number one coach, and that's fine. I mean, there's a platform for that, but they're really getting into the, I want to make this a sales page, and it's not about
Right.
selling, it's about the individual, right? I mean, you'll have certain things in there that you do and how you help people, but the people who are, they're missing like half the sections too. If you look at someone who would professionally hired someone to do their LinkedIn profile, they don't even fill out their accomplishments section. And the accomplishment section has probably another 8 or 9 subsections, which if you utilize that, you start playing SEO. So when you ask
Right.
what different, as I actually repurpose content over and over and over throughout the profile. So, where others have it once in their profile, you'll have it 30 times. And it's
Okay.
strategically placed where to the naked eye, you wouldn't even notice it.
Right.
Right. So it's about positioning and also what's important. So people overlook so many things in their life that they've done that they go, oh, that was no big deal. Like here in the US, there's a lot of organizations, and probably in the UK too, where, like the Salvation Army or the Goodwill. I
Right.
always ask people, well, in volunteering, have you ever, you don't have to be a volunteer, but say, Brian, I'm not that active in the community, but I contribute a lot. Well, that's really the same as volunteering. You're volunteering a contribution to an organization. So when you
Right.
start
Right.
thinking about, have you ever given blood? Yes, you're a blood donor. Okay, so you've contributed and you're a donor. Have you ever purchased an unwrapped toy for Christmas and contributed to the Toys for Tots program? Yeah, I've done that. Have you ever dropped clothes off at the Goodwill? Yeah, I've done. So let's start listing all these things that you've done, as well as education, courses, all those things start to compile, right? Publications, um, honors and awards. People, if you look at LinkedIn and you really get into the weeds, it'll say honors and awards. It doesn't just say awards, it says honors and awards. So you could say, I always say, have you ever run a marathon? Well, that's quite an honor. I mean, have you ever climbed
Fair enough.
the tallest peak, right? And people start realizing that, geez, I go in my office and I have, not myself, but I have all these medals from the 5Ks and the 3Ks and the marathons I've run. It's like, that's kind of an honor to have done that many. And guess what? You'll end up connecting with other people who also are engaged in the same, hobby or interests. So everything counts. And don't be afraid to kind of play around within the lines on LinkedIn to use those opportunities for more keywording and more connecting with people. So, if you look at the accomplishments section, that's probably the most underutilized section of LinkedIn. Languages, publications. So it just goes into organizations. People like, I'll ask every organization you've ever been a part of, even though you're not a member, you were a former member.
Right,
Those
right.
are the key words. So all of a sudden your one page, CV turns into a 32 page because,
Ah,
you know,
that's a very interesting point. I think people maybe take that parallel too far. You know, the way in a lot of industries, your resume needs to be what, one page or two pages, and I think maybe LinkedIn needs to be the same. But as you said, it's actually the other way around. You can really fill it out.
right. We
Right.
have I don't know if you have CVS in the UK, but there's a joke. I mean, the CVS receipts are probably, this long when you check out and you buy, some bubble gum and you get a 30, this receipt, a mile long. So you really want your profile to be as long as possible because it
Okay.
condenses, but the words are behind it. So, and most people aren't reading it. And if they do, it's okay because there's nothing there that's not true. But we really want to put as much as we can. So overload your profile to the point where it's ridiculous and then back it up about a step, right? So
Okay.
take it to the line.
Right. More rather than less. Okay. But
Right.
I love that approach that it sounds like you're based more in a sense, as you said, the word that keeps coming up is connection in the not in the button sense, but in the actual human to human connection and seeing again that phrase you remind me of is serve don't sell. It's that same sort of approach, right?
It really is. In a lot of ways, and there's enough business out there, if for everybody because and one of the things I try to do is I'll notice actually mistakes on people's profiles which are legitimate punctuation errors or duplicates or their websites links aren't working, their phone number's not listed, and I
Right.
spend most of my day calling people and letting them know that their connections are exposed or by the way your link's not working. They had no idea and they just
Right.
say simply thank you, you're welcome, is there anything I can help you with? Not particularly, I just really thought I'd bring it to your attention as a professional, one professional to another. If we were out to dinner and you had a little thing, I'd probably say, hey, you got a little piece of, that's, you know
That's a good analogy.
do
Yeah.
you want to let your friends and your colleagues in your
You got
network
a
run around,
spinach
right?
hanging
Yeah.
out of your teeth or
Right.
something.
So that strategy alone, if you mind in looking for mistakes in people's profile, people aren't offended. They're actually very grateful that you took the time to notify them because how many other people in their network are looking at that person walking around with, that. So they're very appreciative. And then they'll say, well, I don't know how to fix that or I don't know how to do it. And I'll simply say, are you in front of a computer? Yes. Okay, great. This is what you do. Go here, go here. And they're like, thank you so much. Like, so what do you do again? Right? Who are you? Why did you call me?
How do
Right?
you know these things? Yeah, exactly, exactly. I suppose that goes into neatly into the next question. What do you love most about your work? What really gives you a good boost?
Well, that's a great question because that's first of all, I've been carrying the LinkedIn torch, for many many years, and it fell on deaf ears for a very long time. But I never quit. I said, nope, I don't care. The next platform is I'm sticking to LinkedIn. This is pick your pony and run
Yeah,
with
you
it.
backed a good horse there in the end. I think it's not
Yeah,
over yet,
right,
but
right. It's true and steady. It's not going anywhere. But the thing I love the most is that when I work with people to do their profiles, I'm asking them questions from high school to today, right?
right,
2020, soon to be 2021. So I'm taking their literally 30 years of experiences and condensing that into an intake form and seeing what we can sort out. But what I like about it is that I know more about those clients than some of their friends do. I
right.
know
Yeah,
more about their clients than some of their families do because they didn't think it was important. So, and what happens is that I'll say this all the time because you'll come to me and we'll have a conversation. I'll ask the same question. I go, "That's funny. I just worked with a guy who was a bronze medalist in archery, and I see that you're in archery. I'll connect the two of you." So
right,
I'll
right,
send a message out and say, Brian, meet Al. Al is also an avid guitarist, and I thought the two of you should connect on LinkedIn. So it's great because I have all this recollection of all the clients I've worked with and the honors and awards and small things about them that most people don't know. And they're not really private things. They're just things that people haven't ever listed on their profile. So I connect a lot of people and I create a
right.
great network. And a lot of times we become, very friendly with similar interests and things like that. So I like the connecting. and the networking and just the interesting facts about people. Like, oh, I don't want to say that. And that's another myth. I should go back to your myth question. The other is like,
Right.
I don't want to boast. I don't want to brag. You're not. Right.
Right.
That's
Right.
just
Yeah.
so I tell people this is probably the one place where you want to stand on your soapbox and tell everybody everything that you've done that you feel is of merit or interesting. So don't hold back, because that one factor may be why you got the job or the contract.
Right. Right.
I've done landmark education. I probably can attribute at least 5 contracts just to the fact that myself and the person I was speaking with both went to landmark education.
Okay. Okay.
Right, because it was on their profile. So it was that extra thing that I was able to call them and say, hey, I saw your profile. Notice you went to Landmark. The person said, great, changed my life. I said, that's amazing work. What did you like about it most? Then they're like, okay, so what do you do, Brian? I do. Okay, great, you're hired. And it was literally, didn't even have to go through the formal process because I had the secret handshake.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Al, I noticed you were in the Air Force. Yes. Yeah. Myself, I was stationed in Las Vegas. Yeah, me too. Okay, great. And it's like, whatever, noticed you went to this college and you were part of this fraternity. Yeah, me too. Great. And so now we're using those personal connections with people first, and then the business comes afterwards. And sometimes they don't even ask for the presentation. They say, you seem like a solid enough guy. You have enough credentials. How much is it?
It's kind of interesting because you remind me, it's almost more old school. It's kind of how business used to be done, where, people would go to lunch and talk about family and sports and movie or whatever they want to talk about. And then like the last 5 minutes of the conversation might actually be the business that needs doing. Whereas I don't know, you get a feeling in the last 20 years in a lot of spheres that could kind of flip. People are all about the business now, whereas what you're talking about is almost, I say, harking back to days of yonder.
Of the Dale Carnegie, right? It goes back to and if you look at Dale Carnegie training and all that, it hasn't gone away. It's still very popular philosophies, and it's
It,
really about relationships, because that's all we have at the end of the
it
day.
really is. It's
Yeah.
funny because I'm laughing here because I completely forgot about this when I was an art dealer in a previous life, and I remember when I went for a job in a gallery. And the gallery owner spent the entire interview. I was getting ready with all my knowledge about art and artists and the market and how to sell, all this sort of stuff, and waiting for all of these kind of really intense questions. And I think 90% of the hour-long interview was about scuba diving.
Right.
So it's exactly what you're talking about. Literally, man, you know why I like you? Because there's a scuba diver. And I was like, and I asked him years later, or weeks and years later, why did you really focus on the scuba diving? He said, oh, because, scuba diving is an amazing experience for me. And I know you understood that experience. But the other thing is you're in potentially dangerous situation. And I knew that you were like, because you never dive alone, you always have to be buddied up.
Hmm.
So you're used to working in this sort of more dangerous situation, close proximity. So I knew just by that you'd be that bit more reliable. And I was like, wow, okay. So I said people do infer all these things, don't they, from these
It
little
is.
connections from
There
one
are, and
line.
it's amazing how people will get right to the initial building of the trust based on those common interests. Because there is definitely a correlation to those activities with character traits for the most part. I mean, we can't be 100% accurate, but we can make a very good guesstimate that there's going to be a fit or a way to work with that person. So, in case in point, I did a research study probably 3 weeks, not 3 weeks, that's 3 years ago, not three
Right.
weeks. There's a mortgage brokers. There's a magazine called the Scotsman's Guide, right?
Okay.
And yeah, so that's the best of the best, the top 1%ers in the country. So I went on and I looked up all the top 100 of the best on their LinkedIn profile, and I looked to see what was in common with all of those top producers, right? And at the
Right.
time, LinkedIn, before Microsoft bought them, you were able to put in your personal interests. So,
Right.
right, they don't have that anymore, but I figured a way around that. It's a different conversation, but you can still put them in. So I looked at all of those 100, and what I found in common was they all were into motocross, paragliding, bungee
Wow.
jumping, cross, BMX bikes and all. So literally all the top producers in the mortgage business were adrenaline junkies.
Right.
So now I built a so now when a company came to me and said, Brian, I want to start a recruiting campaign and I want to get some really hungry, top-notch mortgage brokers or loan officers, can you help me build a list? So they said, well, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to find all the loan officers in California that do bungee jumping, parachuting, right? And then that's how I filtered my list. Because based
Okay.
on experience, you would know that those people are probably going to be high producers.
Outstanding. Outstanding.
Yeah. So there's a lot of little ways you can use data and information to cross-pollinate your searches and reverse engineer.
Just taking a step back for a moment, just in how you got to where you are. You mentioned you worked with Brian Tracy back in the day, and you had a huge amount of sales training in that regard. Did that shape some of your perspectives in what you're bringing into to how you handle LinkedIn and how you differentiate?
So LinkedIn I had discovered prior to Brian Tracy, but
Okay.
the tie-in to going back to our conversation about what kind of results can I expect, right?
Right, right.
So I've been a fan of Brian for years, and when I did my sales calls, I always had his audio programs playing in between calls, driving around. And I was in California, so I was on the freeway a lot, and so
Okay.
so I've listened to Brian's entire catalog right over the years. And I was in the car with a friend of mine, and and then one day I just looked at him. I said, Brian lives in California. He's right up the street. He goes, yeah,
Oh,
I knew that. I said, yeah. I go, one of these days I'm just gonna work for him. Like, he goes, what? He goes, what do you mean? You just like that? I go, well, I don't know. I'm just setting the goal. I said, I think one of these days I'm just going to work for Brian Tracy. He's like, okay. So I went on LinkedIn, saw Brian had an account, sent him a message, said, Brian, thank you for the mentorship. Even though it was from afar, I appreciate all your wisdom in my sales career. I would love to connect. Sent it out. Next day, Brian Tracy accepted your connection request. Cool, right? I thought that was good. Then I got a message back from someone in his staff. Hey, we saw your message. We know you're here local in San Diego. Brian really appreciated it. He wanted to invite you to the office. We're having a luncheon, and we'd love to have you as a guest. I was like, okay.
great.
All right.
Uh,
And then they said, went around the table. So Brian, welcome, great. Thanks for, really appreciate being here. So tell me what you do. Well, I'm a title insurance rep. I work with real estate agents and loan officers. And, I covered this territory. I probably have 3,000 plus agents that I work with and, over my book of business. And they go, great. We actually have a product that we're rolling out that we think would be great for that industry. Would you be interested in beta testing it for us? Absolutely. Great.
right.
So I'd be an affiliate, right? They're like, yeah, well, you'll be an affiliate and we'd help you. So I said, okay. So I started that process with the product and was sharing the news with everybody. And then they just said, after a month, they said, why don't you come on in and become our, the business development director. And then you can start to expand into other areas. So I did that for 3 years.
Outstanding. Outstanding.
Yeah. And I called my friend, of course, and said, you're never going to believe it. He's like, you're working with Brian Tracy? I go, I sure am. So it was a great experience. But because of that, imagine being immersed in someone who's speaking, 5 to 7 days a week at different venues. I went to all those venues and got to sit through all the seminars with multi-speaker lines, hang out with all of these people. And so for 3 years, I literally was in a seminar for 3 years straight of just information. So I learned things I never thought I'd even know about green
Right.
screen production, email marketing funnels. I mean, you name it, right? It just goes down the line. I'm like, so I'm a jack
Right.
of all trades, right?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Excellent stuff. Although I'd imagine your knowledge of LinkedIn is superior than theirs by this stage. It has to be.
It's just the approach. I think the approach is like, again, LinkedIn has so many levels. And the surface, it's this. If you dig deeper and you dig, what's beyond that and what's beyond that. So the old tried and true onion, analogy, right? You keep
Right.
peeling on LinkedIn, and you really, if you want to play to who you are, and if you know who you're looking to connect with and who you are and what you like, you can marry those two, those two interests and get really quality opportunities with people and be real in the conversations. They really appreciate it. Geez, I didn't expect a phone call. I never thought about it that way. Or, you're
Okay.
right. You're right. And the law of reciprocity is always at play, right? So if you're putting things out, you may get it not from that person, but from someone 3 levels in their connections because they remembered what you did and they remember how you helped them. So I think people are, as you said, are going to trying for the sale. Like, I need to make 10 calls today. I need to get one sale in the door. It doesn't work that way unless you have something built on. Otherwise, it's a commodity, right? Well, what's the price?
Right. And that's a lovely way to put it. You're removing a large amount of that commodity aspect of those sales interactions or sales conversations. Okay.
Right. And people get hung up on competition. What's my competitor doing? And, if you type in LinkedIn expert, which, I don't even know who's qualifying everyone as an expert, that other people say you're an expert. I don't say I'm an expert. I'm a student, right? But there's 120,000 people on LinkedIn that are also in the same space as, and quote unquote, provide what I do. And I don't worry about that. They're like, well, hey, my friends say, hey, I got this email about, here's your competitor. I go, I'm not worried about it. And why? Because there's 28 billion people on LinkedIn, right?
Right.
And I can only work with how many, right? So if you know your numbers, LinkedIn's going to be a lot easier to manage if you really know what your bandwidth is. But if you don't have an idea, you will find yourself overwhelmed. And when people get overwhelmed, they quit that habit, or they quit that procedure, because like, it's just too much. You have to know your numbers and the way that you work every day and what you're comfortable with. You may not like to post. Guess what? You don't have to. You may not like to do happy birthdays. Don't do them. But there will be one thing that you will like, and you just do a lot of that one thing, right?
Okay.
So
So just refine that one or two things. Okay. Okay. Very good. In your experience, either with sales or more specifically on LinkedIn, was there one cock up or one sort of, I don't know if you want to call it a failure, that was particularly instructive about what not to do or which way to go or anything like that?
yeah, I think managing expectations is
That's
always
the big one again. Okay.
is the big one, right? Because I've had multiple, and LinkedIn isn't just for anybody. I mean, I've had artists, musicians, yoga teachers. Anyone can use LinkedIn for a service or product. However, some of the people that go in there are looking for that instant result, because their thought is, if I am paying you to help me with this, then I need a return, right?
Right.
And then
Right.
I always ask them, when you were born, in your birth certificate, did you turn over the back and say, here's my guarantee in life, right? So
Right.
I don't know if you can put a guarantee on anything working unless you're willing to do the work, and I can't put a guarantee on when it'll happen, but I know it will. Some people get
Right.
a sale the first week. Some people get it 6 months, 3 years. It all depends on how big is it, what's the sales cycle, what's the product. All of those factors come into play. But you will get a result. I just don't know when. And people don't like not having a guarantee when they're spending money, right?
Right.
How do I know it's going to work? That's what they say. How do I know it's going to work, right? How do you know it's not going to work? And how do I know? How do I know you're actually going to do the work as I've laid out in this business plan? That's the other factor, is the accountability, right?
Absolutely. And just on that, I mean, what sort of, because again, there's every type of person on LinkedIn, is there a certain demographic that you prefer to work with where possible, or?
I've been quoted many times as being they'll say you're one of the most patient people I've ever met, right? Because I'll deal with, the non-computer savvy, right, people,
Right.
and I'll deal with the most savviest computer person. So when it comes to who I like to work with, there really isn't a category. I like to work with fun people. Number one, people who have a little bit of a personality are okay to, step out of their comfort zone a little bit. So anyone,
Okay.
who's willing to be vulnerable on their LinkedIn, and just push the envelope just a little bit, right? And I help
Okay.
people kind of see where that can be, important, because people say, "Oh, I don't want to put that out there because that would make me not look professional." Yeah, but that's who you are, right? So why are people only getting this glimpse when the reality is that you're a world-class scuba diver, but you don't want anybody to know, right?
I got you. I got you. So is there one question that I should have asked you, but I didn't?
There's so many, and always with a limited amount of time, and
Yeah.
you can cover so much, and I can talk, you know, for 6 hours on this and that on LinkedIn. And I think the main thing is that just give it a try. And don't be afraid and overwhelmed, because it is overwhelming. It's designed that way, right? There's a lot of bells and whistles because the more things that are out there keep your attention. The longer you're on LinkedIn, the longer you may purchase something. So you have to put your blinders on and be really task oriented when you go into there. Otherwise,
Okay.
it will turn into Facebook and you'll just be scrolling through and reading and liking. And it's like, that's great, but we have to put a cap on it, right? So make sure you manage your time, because it can, if you have a, you know, if you like shiny objects, you know, there's a lot of them on there, right? So
Absolutely.
be super focused, and realize it's not going to get done. There's no instant magic wand. It's going to require work. And when people hear that, they go, "Oh, can't I just automate it?" Okay, maybe you could, but you could also run the risk of getting your account shut down because you're not allowed to use third-party widgets and automation tools and bots. People do, but there is a risk, and it's not worth the risk to me when I'd rather just have a few calls or conversations per day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if people watching or listening to this would like to read more about you, I presume they should just go to your LinkedIn profile.
That's well said. That's exactly what I would say. It's like, call me. I'm on LinkedIn. Send me a request. Say I was on the podcast. You listen to the podcast and would love to connect. Give me a frame as far as who you are, and I'm even happy to do a quick little once over. Most of the time, I'll read your profile and I'll mention if there's any improvements you can make or some things you could do, and just kind of give you a few tips. But it's a great tool. One question maybe you might want to ask, or I'll just prompt the questions what we
Yeah.
didn't cover. People always ask, should I buy the premium version, right?
It's a good one. Yeah, yeah.
Free versus premium. In my experience, I've done everything with the free version. So the answer to me is you do not need to be spending the money. So if you want to cancel that premium membership, I would go ahead and do that because you still get most of the functionality. There's always one thing you might have to give up, but at the end of the day, it's not worth the $97 or $59 or $29 you're
I
spending.
remember you saying this before, that even if you're in an office setup where everyone has it, it's usually one of the first things you do is just bring it down to only one person out of like the 5 or the 10 people actually needing the premium account, which
Right. Yeah. If you looked
immediate
at the org,
savings.
yeah, if you look at the org chart, if you have a sales manager, then yes, okay, and it's in the budget, then have the sales manager have an account, and that sales manager can hand the leads out to the sales agents, right, or the
Gotcha, gotcha.
sales group. So ways to get around it. Probably LinkedIn doesn't want to hear all the hacks I have to get around you not paying for it, but
But well, in fairness to if anyone from LinkedIn happens to be listening to this, says you're very anti-spam and you're anti-bot, which is great. And as I said, it's all about that integrity of the genuine human connection of actually reaching out and being interested in other people and in other people's business. And as we keep saying, how you can serve rather than just sell. And that's kind of the key thing. And it's one of the reasons, as I said, why I reached out to you for the interview today, Brian. So thank you for that. Precisely because you have that integrity with your approach. You're not advocating anything spammy or lacking in integrity. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. And again, LinkedIn, if you do have the budget, it is there are some nice features for it. But if you don't, and it's a line item, then you don't have to have it. Then go that route too. So, but I think that we all have to be together in this, in the integrity of LinkedIn, because it's getting saturated. It's causing a lot of spam, and people run the risk of losing a quality lead because we're so used to a non-quality message that we're simply not even paying attention.
yeah.
So one of the last tip I'll give is I always like to have my clients go back at least 2 years in their messages, right?
Mm,
Sort through them, because there's a lot of engagement there that we missed. We just completely missed it because it kept getting pushed down. Right. So
mm-hmm.
take some time. It might take you 2 or 3 hours, but it's well worth it. And in the end, you'll find someone who you haven't thought about for a long time. And then you could re-engage with them and say, hey, I was going through some old messages. How are you doing? So you just never know
It's
what
a
can happen
great
from
point.
that.
It's a great
Right.
point. The other one just to mention is, if you are getting spammed, mark it as such and don't just let it go. I remember you saying this to me.
Yeah, you can report the profile to LinkedIn, and I'm not going to do that unless it's really out of control. Like if it's
I mean,
over, yeah.
you showed me one where the guy literally had sent you 9 messages without response. It was bordering on abusive.
It
Like
was
that
right.
that deserves, cancel spam, get rid of these people because that's not cool.
No, one or two I'm okay with, but it's not a drip marketing system. I mean, when you're taking valuable time away from me to read something that I'm not interested in, that obviously I haven't replied to, um, and if that's the case, if you're a true salesperson, in my opinion, you'd pick up the phone and call me and say, Brian, I noticed I've sent you about 9 messages on LinkedIn. Reason I did is I really wanted to get your attention, but then I realized you might not be on LinkedIn as often as I am, so I thought I'd give you a phone call and see if I could reach you. So either way, it has to go to a phone call. If you think
Okay.
you can bring your business, then you're playing a numbers game, right? Then it
Right.
becomes numbers and funnels, but you're not getting repeat or referrals. The phone is really where everything is going to be. So try to go with the mentality of, if you don't like the phone, then we need to figure out another way, because we want to get people from LinkedIn to a phone call introduction and have a conversation, right? But to
To the
stay on
conversation.
to
The
stay
key
on
thing.
LinkedIn messaging is, I mean, ultimately it's going to have to go to a Zoom call or something. You can't
Right.
just, I would want to know who I'm talking to if I'm going to, swipe my credit card.
Absolutely. Never mind do any sort of substantial contract deal or anything like that. I mean, it's a whole other level again.
Right.
Excellent stuff. Well, look, thank you very much for coming on the show, Brian. It's been fantastic. And if anyone has any LinkedIn issues, they want to improve their LinkedIn strategy and really get some gains out of LinkedIn, I cannot recommend Brian enough. Reach out to him, have a chat, and take it from there.
Yeah, I really appreciate it and looking forward to everybody. I'll see you on LinkedIn in the meantime.
Absolutely. Thanks again,
All
Brian.
right. Thanks, all. Take care.
You too.